Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Holly Dinnany, and I am with Family Partners of Morris and Sussex County. And I would like to welcome you to today's Lunch and Learn program on June 10th, 2021. This is a program where we like to bring an expert to the table to talk with us about an important topic. And this is a conversation. We have a presentation, but we are hoping that anyone who has questions or burning issues that they want to see addressed, that we take advantage of having somebody who is an expert in the field that they're presenting on. And today we have with us Danny Papa, who is the board president of the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking. And Danny is a repeat presenter. We had such a great time with him last time he came back, giving us some really, really important information about things that parents need to know about technology. And unfortunately, some of the ways that it has helped our children, it's also posed some challenges for our children. So, Danny, I'm going to turn it over to you. We asked you to come and speak to us about social media in particular. I know there's been a lot of, there was a recent HBO special on Fake Famous, I think it was called, about kind of how, we all know that social media is a powerful thing. And we also know that as adults, sometimes we are not as in the know as maybe we should be about how these platforms work, and also how our kids might, of course, they know more than we do, but they might also be manipulated and tricked and deceived by people who know more than they know about what's going on. So thank you for agreeing to come back and talk to us again. And Danny, if I remember correctly, you have a role in a school, do you not? And you also have a really cool story, I think, about how you got into this line of education.
Yeah, I'm actually in a school right now, so you will hear bells going off from time to time. So I apologize for that that noise. But so yeah, I'm currently a K-12 supervisor in Morris County of social studies, art, and technology education. As of July 1st, I'm transitioning to becoming an elementary principal.
Ooh.
So yeah.
That's exciting. At what school, may I ask?
Arthur Stanlick School in Lake Apacon.
Oh, that's awesome.
Jefferson Township. Yep.
They're lucky to have you, Danny. Congratulations.
Oh,
that's great.
I'm looking forward to it. And so I first learned about human trafficking in I would say the mid 2000s. And it was an issue that I will never forget where I was when I first learned about it. It gripped my heart. I could not believe that there were literal sex houses and brothels in parts of the world where little boys and little girls were being held against their will to perform sex acts on men and women from all over the world who would fly to those brothels which is a term called sex tourism. When I first learned about it, it gripped my heart, and I just wanted to do something about it, and I just wasn't sure what to do. All I knew was to donate to a local organization that introduced me to the issue. I still donate to them to this day. They're an amazing organization out of Connecticut called Love 146. And then a few years later in teaching, I prepared a lesson on the introduction of slavery in the Jamestown colony in 1619 with my students. And I thought to myself, a great opening question would be, does slavery still exist today? And I asked the question, and the eighth grade students in this U.S. history classroom on a Friday morning looked at me like, Mr. Papa, you're out of your mind. What do you mean slavery still exists today? And then through the lesson, I made the connection between slavery in America's past and modern slavery. I went through a 10-minute overview of the issue of human trafficking, and I showed an interactive website. And at the end of the lesson, a student came up to me and said, Mr. Papa, can you give me that web address? I'd like to learn more about this issue. She came back to me that Monday morning, and she had the same response that I had when I first learned about the issue. She said, Mr. Papa, we have to do something about this. How amazing, right? In eighth grade. Sorry, here's the bells.
You told us they were coming.
Yep. An eighth grade student had the empathy to say, I cannot believe that something like this exists on planet Earth, and it's affecting my generation. So we have to do something about it. And from there, make a long story short, we ended up starting an awareness club at our school that turned into a nonprofit organization called Project Stay Gold. It was a student-led organization. The students created videos. They went to a number of different places and gave speeches. And from there, the organization just began to grow. We developed a lot of partnerships with law enforcement, the FBI, Homeland Security, the Attorney General's office. And the students were spoken about on the floor of the United States Senate in July of 2013 by interim United States Senator Jeff Chiesa, as he recognized the work of Project Stay Gold and the work that the students were engaging in. And many of the students have now gone on, now that they're in careers, to working in social justice fields, forever marked by this work, and continuing to raise awareness and bring about prevention through just what they do in their daily lives.
Danny, I've heard that story before, but I'm telling you, I got goosebumps all over again. Like, I just think it's so powerful how moved you were. But I think, and I'm sure I'm not the only person on this call, that our kids have so much to give in helping solve today's problems, don't they? I mean, I really
absolutely. And what we're talking about today, the thing we have to remember is that the issue of human trafficking is so different than many issues, because the majority of victims, and it's always hard, everyone wants statistics when it comes to human trafficking, and it is so difficult to put statistics on a crime that happens in the shadows and happens in darkness. It's hard to quantify it all. However, we know that the majority of victims of human trafficking are middle school, high school, college age students. So all the more reason why we need to empower young people to know the risk factors, recognize the warning signs, not only for themselves, but then also for their, for their friends, their peers, their family members, and so on, to keep them safe. And so that's why a lot of what we're doing at the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking is trying to empower middle school and high school students, and as well as college students, with the knowledge that they can have. Knowledge is power, and we believe that education is prevention. Education is much more than just awareness. It's prevention. When a young person knows how to identify the risk factors and warning signs, that's how we could begin to prevent the issue of human trafficking.
I'm in, Danny. Lay down what you've got to give us, because I love what you're doing, and I just appreciate how teachers and counselors that are on this call, the power that you have to empower our youth is really very remarkable. So what do you have for us?
Well, I just want to thank everyone that's on the call. I feel that the largest challenge that we face at the coalition, and the largest challenge that we face in the work of preventing human trafficking, is simply apathy. Is just the citizens just not caring, not wanting to know more, not recognizing this as an issue. So oftentimes we get, oh, this is something that happens in another country, or this doesn't happen here in the United States. And there's such a blindness to the reality of this issue, and that's something I wanted to do here today, is maybe give you a little bit more of an insight into how a young person gets caught up into human trafficking. Right? What is the vehicle? And all of the research shows, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children will say that yes, runaway children, runaway youth are definitely one of the number one modes or vehicles that a young person will enter into trafficking. We also know that there's issues within the foster care system as a gateway into trafficking. But something that I wanted to really bring to your attention today is something that affects every single young person, not just runaway and foster care children. It affects every single child. When I had the opportunity in September of 2013 to testify before the United States Senate Committee, Homeland Security Senate Committee, but before I testified, there were the members of Homeland Security and FBI who testified. And I'll never forget this. The one member of the FBI who's heading up their task force, he said to the Senate panel and the Senate committee that the committee hearing was simply about why is this happening, and what could we do as the United States Senate to prevent it. And what the gentleman from the FBI said, he said, you have to understand that the young people in our wealthiest communities at our wealthiest universities are being targeted just as much by traffickers and predators as in our urban areas. And it's such a misconception to think that there's only a certain demographic, or there's certain areas of the country that's happening. the reality is very simple. Anyone who has a cell phone, any young person who has a cell phone, any young person who has access to the internet is at threat of being groomed, going through the grooming process and being introduced into trafficking. And so I'll share my screen a little bit here. I have a few different things to bring up. Okay. So, okay. So what we have seen because of the COVID-19 pandemic is that there has been a dramatic increase of screen time for our young people. At the coalition for the last 6-7 years, our focus has been primarily on middle school, high school, and college age students. Lieutenant John Pizarro of the state police, he just retired. He's also the head of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. He's a friend of ours, a consultant. He's done a number of different presentations for us. He said to me, he said, Mr. Papa, if you're focused on middle school and high school students, you're far too late. So I also want you to think about, the points that he has made and what he has seen with his own eyes and his experience, that, children in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade who are just receiving cell phones and tablets and computers for the first time, all have fallen prey to this process of online grooming. And so with the pandemic, we have seen all of schooling has been shifted to online virtual learning, and students are in front of devices all day long, right? Which is very different than being in a brick and mortar building for 35 to maybe 40 hours a week, which is their normal routine. So if you look here at this statistic, I know everyone wants statistics, so here's one for you. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children experienced a shocking 120% increase in the cyber tip line reports from May of 2019, which was 745,000 reports, to 1.6, almost close to 1.7 million tips in May of 2020, and that's all because of the obviously the pandemic and the increased amount of children in front of devices and online. Here's the thing: for those of you who are educators, you're totally going to get this. For those of you who are parents, you're totally going to understand this. For those of you who are neither, trust me when I say that this has been the most difficult moment in all of education. Most school districts do not have a policy that says that cameras have to be on. The majority of students have sat in their classes for the past year and a half with their cameras off, disengaged, bored, apathetic to learning. That's been the reality, unfortunately. And I can guarantee you that there are many children who are in class because they signed on to a Zoom or a Google Meet, but their screen's off and they're playing a video game, or they're on Instagram, or they're doing something with a different device. I'm in virtual classrooms all the time, and I see it with my own eyes. How many times the teacher is calling on a student and the student's not responding because they're logged in, but they're not there, right? So what are they doing? I can guarantee you that what they're doing is going to have something related to technology, right? And the one thing that we have to keep in mind too is that video games have changed so much from the time we were young, right? The majority of video games now are internet based, which means that a student can play Fortnite, a student can play Minecraft with someone else that's maybe in California or in Canada and so on. So there's like a whole social component of gaming now. It's not Mario Brothers like when I was 10 years old, right? It's now internet based where there's that whole the communication piece of it, which we'll talk about in a second. So I had a meeting with a few students probably about 3 months ago now, and we had an issue with bullying and harassment and so on that was really facilitated through Snapchat and so on, and we were getting to the bottom of it and was talking to the students. And he was like, Mr. Papa, from March, and I guess this was in maybe this past like February. So he's like, Mr. Papa, for the past year, I've been quarantined in my bedroom. Like I haven't been able to leave. and I'm craving friends and I'm craving to be social. And so what I'm turning to is my phone, right? This is where I can be social. And what he said was so priceless. I mean, he's speaking on behalf of a generation of young people that, I have said in multiple occasions that this pandemic has been difficult on all of us. Every single one of us have been impacted in one way or another. We've lost loved ones. It's been depressing and discouraging and so on. My opinion is that no age demographic has been more emotionally, and mentally and socially impacted than our young people. Why? Because as adults, we're pretty much settled in our routine. If we quarantine or if we're relegated to our homes for a few months, we'll figure it out. We can make do. But you have to remember that many of our kids were taken out of their sports. They were taken out of after school activities. School was taken away from them. For many of our young people, school is a safety net. Their teachers, their counselors, their coaches are the people that they confide in, that they trust, that they know, and that they love. They were taken away from their friends. So many things were taken away from kids: proms and leagues and just on so many different levels, graduations, and the mental impact has been great on young people. And what are they doing? They're doing exactly what that student, the 8th grade student that I just mentioned, said, is they're turning to their phones, right? They're turning to social media to be social, to have friends, to have interaction, to have communication. That's what we as humans crave. And as adults, we crave that as well. But if you think about who you were at age 14, right, and put yourself in wherever you were at age 14 in the middle of a pandemic, completely relegated to your house or your bedroom, how difficult that would have been for you. And that's what many of our young people have gone through. So one of the things I want to get to is to talk about some of these apps and these internet-based games. So the one thing that we need to understand is that predators and traffickers are extremely savvy. Predators and traffickers are, they're always 10 steps ahead of law enforcement and the citizen, right? And parents. And what law enforcement has found is that traffickers and predators will pose under fake profiles on all different social media platforms and accounts. What we have learned from Lieutenant John Pizarro is that the dark web is a place where the predators and traffickers receive their training, where they receive their education on how to pursue young people through social media and internet-based games. On the dark web, Lieutenant John Pizarro informed us that there is a chat room for pedophiles that has over 35,000 members in this one chat room on the dark web, where they can learn all of these insidious tactics on how to make connections and then eventually groom a young person for their ultimate goal. The ultimate goal of a trafficker and predator is an in-person physical meeting. Okay, that's something that you want to know and understand, that the goal of the predator is to arrange a moment and a time where that young person and them could have a meeting. The definition of human trafficking is the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the means of profit or exploitation, right? And the force, fraud, and coercion will be the tactics that are used when that meeting occurs. So how do we get to that point of that meeting? It really begins through what is called a grooming process, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit here. So here is just a number of different social media apps, not only apps but also messaging apps as well, that predators and traffickers will use. And so, like I said, they'll begin with a fake profile. They will have a picture that is not who they are. They'll have the profile of not who they are. Obviously, many times the profile is one of a 15-year-old boy or a 17-year-old girl that they're posing as, with all these different interests, everything very intentional to target the type of young person that they're looking to eventually have this in-person meeting with, right? So At any one time, a predator or trafficker through these fake profiles on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, the list goes on and on and on. TikTok, all even on Fortnite and internet-based games, through these fake profiles, what they're doing is they're doing very subtle tactics like liking a post, right? Liking a tweet, retweeting, maybe leaving an innocent comment on the picture. At any one time, they can be having conversations with anywhere between 50, 60, 75 different young people. They're looking for the young person who is vulnerable. They're looking for the young person who has a ton of different social and emotional needs, because they're looking to exploit those needs in order to provide that young person with what they're looking for, right? So if the young person is lonely, they're looking to provide friendship. If the young person is depressed, they're looking to encourage them in any way they can. So they're looking for vulnerable youth. And what they're doing is they're looking for someone who maybe doesn't have a lot of followers and may not have a lot of likes or comments on posts. And that's where they begin to like and they begin to comment. And then they try to then innocently start a conversation through direct messaging. And those conversations could go on for weeks at a time. And one of the most one of the things that we really need to take away from this is that the tactic that really needs to be exposed to parents as well as young people that a predator and trafficker is going to use when they start conversations through direct messaging or through WhatsApp or Omegle or Kik or any of those other type of messaging apps. What they're going to do is they're going to use what's called mirroring language, language that mirrors or language that repeats. So a young person may say, the direct messages may start, hey, what's going on? Student may write back, nothing, just at home. Predator might write back, oh, I'm at home too. What the predator is looking to do is looking for the young person to say something, and then the predator will say something and would repeat that language. So the young person may say, yeah, I'm home. I'm playing Fortnite. I don't want to go to school today. And the predator may say, I don't like school. I'm not in school today either. I'm home playing video games as well. And then that will just start the conversation. The predator is looking for the littlest bit of information to then seize upon. And that's another aspect, is that young people are putting far too much information into their posts, into the posting that they're doing. Sometimes they're putting their location of where, on Instagram, they're putting the location of where this picture was taken, whether it's a playground, a mall, the back of a school. Sometimes they're putting their school information on there. And what predators are doing is they're looking for all these pieces of information that they can then use in a conversation, right? Because essentially what they're looking to do is they're looking to establish trust in that conversation. They're looking to establish points of entry into this relationship. And so that's really where it begins. The more obvious or the more blatant predators or traffickers will ask for something, eventually, oh, can I have a picture of yourself? Or they may even get to the point of asking for inappropriate pictures of the young person, or inappropriate videos of the young person. We'll talk about sextortion in a second. But they're also, again, they're just looking for that information to seize upon. One of the other tactics that a predator or trafficker will use is once they have this conversation in place, and this conversation that is going on and on and on, maybe over the course of days or weeks, is to then try to move the conversation from Instagram DMing or Snapchatting to a different platform. And Discord, for example, is a platform that is often used. Discord does not have end-to-end encryption. So end-to-end encryption means that, so for example, Facebook does not have end-to-end encryption, which means that law enforcement or the government could go in and they could monitor those conversations, right? That they could be public if they had to be. Platforms like Discord that do not have or that have end-to-end encryption means that they're completely locked. They cannot be viewed by the public. There's a movement to make Facebook and all of our social media platforms to mirror something like Discord, which is very troubling. Many in law enforcement do not want to see that happen for this reason. So the fact that, so when you begin to think about it, we talk about red flags. Red flags are meaning, what are those things that are happening in a conversation that should say, wait a minute, why is this person who just came out of nowhere all of a sudden so interested in me? Or why does this person think they know me? Why are they asking me certain questions? Why does it seem like everything I say, they're saying the exact same thing? These are very easy tactics for young people to fall prey to, but they should also lead to a lot of questions. And that's something that we've tried to do through our Locker Slam campaign this past year, was to really prompt students with questions, right? Who are you DMing? Who is this person that just started following you? I have said for years now when I speak with young people, under no circumstance should you ever engage in a conversation online with someone that you do not know. If you don't know who that person is, do not have a conversation with them, right? Because you don't know who they really are. Just because they have that picture and that profile and everything looks and sounds great, it doesn't mean that that's exactly who that person is. So the end-to-end encryption. So the other red flag is if someone wants to move the conversation that's happening on Instagram direct messaging to a platform that's different, why? Right? Why can't we just have the conversation here, right? Why do we have to go exist and transition to another platform, right? So one of the things I mentioned here is sextortion, right? And sextortion simply is threats to expose a sexual image in order to make a person do something. And you can look at some of the statistics that are here. These statistics were collected by a phenomenal organization called Thorn. Thorn works in the digital space to help prevent everything that we're talking about, to help prevent the online grooming process. And this is a big part of the grooming process, is once that conversation gets to the point of asking a young person for something, right? A picture, a video, the predator and traffickers looking to hold anything they can to extort, to sextort this individual. And we heard a story of a young person who gave this person that they didn't know, who ended up being a predator, an inappropriate picture of themselves. It was a young girl from a wealthy suburban neighborhood town. And what this predator said to her was, if you do not come and meet me at the bottom of your driveway in my car, I am going to send this picture of yourself to your mother's boss. That is an example of sextortion. Okay. Now, remember, the ultimate goal is this in-person meeting, right? So when a predator or trafficker has incriminating, let's say, information on a young person, it's very easy for them to facilitate this in-person meeting, because they can use this very thing. They can make threats of exposing what has been shared, right? And as Thorne is pointing out here, threats happen sooner for online victims, right? First contact is typically by phone, via social media friend request, and then victims are targeted on platforms that they frequent. So, it's just something, these are just some more statistics and some things to keep in mind regarding sextortion, which is a huge aspect of this in-person meeting. So it's definitely something to keep in mind, is part of that process that is kind of bridging between those online conversations and then that in-person meeting. And then, as I said, the definition of human trafficking is the use of force, fraud, or coercion. When you get to that in-person meeting, that is where an element of force can be used. Coercion, could be used, and it could be through threats. It could be through violence. It could be through the use of drugs or alcohol, to then manipulate that young person into a situation that could very, very quickly turn into a trafficking situation. we often were friends with Holly Austin Smith. She's a survivor of human trafficking. She was a young person who grew up in New Jersey. She's written a book called Walking Prey, and her story is very similar to this. However, her story happened in person at a mall. It was the summer between her her 8th and 9th grade year. She was 13, turning 14. She was at a mall in Atlantic City. A man approached her and began to talk to her and began to ask her, what do you want to do when you grow up? And it's very similar to the type of conversation that could happen online now, right? This was a few years ago. And, she said, I want to be a singer. I want to be in a band. He's like, no way, right? Here comes this repetitive and mirroring language, right? No way. You want to be in a band? My best friend owns a recording studio. He's a producer. He's a songwriter. Why don't I get your number and we could stay in touch and I could bring you to the studio, I could introduce you to him. He would love to work with you. He's always looking for new talent, right? And she exchanged numbers and she started having a few weeks long of a conversation with this gentleman. And then they arranged an in-person meeting. And the way her story goes is when she met who she thought was going to be this man who she was talking to from the mall in person, it ended up being a very different person. And when she got in the car with this gentleman, she knew very quickly that this was not the same person that she was talking to, right? She was brought to a hotel. She was forced to wear certain types of clothing and certain types of makeup. And within 24 hours, she was on the streets of Atlantic City as not a freshman yet in high school. And fortunately for her, she was only in the life for, I believe it was about 72 hours, where she came in contact with law enforcement, and law enforcement intervened. So that story, which is a true story, which is a survivor story, kind of gives you a little bit of an indication of the types of conversations that predators will have with young people, how they'll go about arranging that in-person meeting, and then how force, fraud, or coercion will be used to then manipulate that young person into some sort of trafficking situation. So that's one aspect. If you went to nj.com and you just looked up, something along the lines of, something like this headline, you would not be surprised. You would be amazed at how many raids and how many successful busts the state police and the Attorney General's office has had here in New Jersey when it comes to child pornography. That's another aspect where, through online grooming, predators and traffickers could be looking to use force, fraud, or coercion through an online meeting to force young people into a situation like this. So with what I described there, here are some of the things that we have outlined on our website, Safer NJ, that you can look at, safernj.org, of what you could do to prevent these types of scenarios that I just described. You can remind children to only interact online and on gaming apps with people that they know and trust in the real world. If a young person knows someone from a club team that they play on, great, right? If they know someone from a youth group that they're part of, great. If they know someone through their cousin in another high school or middle school and they want to interact with social media and follow, that's great. But when someone you do not know is following you, you should question why. Who is this person? Why are they following me? What do they want here, right? And we oftentimes, we were talking earlier about fake famous. It's all about who has more followers and who has more likes. It's really not about that at all. That stuff's not important when it comes to really knowing who these people are that are following you.
Danny, can I just jump into that? It's so interesting because you hear about the physical rush that you get when somebody likes something you post. Like, yeah. I mean, these kids are, I think all of us as adults can relate to that little surge that you get when you feel seen, right?
Absolutely. And that's a great point. And that's something that the predators and traffickers are very aware of. And that's something they know that, and that's why I said, that's oftentimes why they're looking for the young person who doesn't have a lot of followers, right? Who, as they're looking through their post, may not have maybe they only have 15 likes, right? And that's why they start liking everything, right? And they start commenting on everything because they're really beginning to play on those vulnerabilities, as well as that emotional rush that, wow, someone's paying attention to me, right? Someone is beginning to give me what I'm looking for, right? Whether it's, like I said earlier, whether it's, the young person's depressed, or the young person's lonely, or the young person, has a poor self-image of themselves, and someone now all of a sudden is telling them things that they've never heard before. It was really interesting when, as the students of Project Stay Gold developed working relationships with the Attorney General's office. There was an assistant attorney general that we met very early on in the AG's office in Trenton. And she said to me, she's like, "Mr. Papa, it happens this easily. A predator or trafficker is in a mall in New Jersey, and they're just looking, they're just watching, they're sitting there, they're watching young people walk by. They're looking for that young person who is downcast, who looks depressed, who looks vulnerable, who looks insecure. And that's the young person that they're going to walk up to, and they're going to say, you're beautiful." And when that young person looks at that predator trafficker and says, "You're the first person that's ever said that to me," and this is what the Attorney General, or assistant Attorney General, said to me. She said, "Mr. Papa, in that moment, that predator knows that he has an in with that young person," right? So it's a lot of times I think for us, this seems to be like this abstract thing that it's like, how could this happen? There's no way that this happens in New Jersey. There's no way this happens in the United States. But it's so subtle and so simple, in the way that it's happening. And, I have to say that for those of you who may be interested in the issue of human trafficking, in the state of New Jersey in 2021, we have had two major operations, a major arrest. In February, there was a trafficking ring in Bergen County, New Jersey, of 22 traffickers who were all arrested. And what they were doing was they were smuggling women from Mexico and Central America into the United States. And they had an entire sex trafficking network that was set up in Bergen County, in areas of Northeast Jersey. It was spanning into New York City, spanning into upstate New York, Rockland County, and so on. You can read all about it on NJ.com. There's a large story about it. And then in a little bit of a different context, a month ago in Robbinsville, there is a temple that's being built, and it is being built by modern slaves. And the FBI raided this large temple that's being built. And so far, through their investigation, they've uncovered nearly 200 victims, who some were being paid $1 a day to work 14, 15 hours a day. They were again smuggled into the country and forced to do just inhumane labor in the building of this temple in Robbinsville. The FBI obviously is still investigating it, but they believe that this might be the largest human trafficking raid in American history, and it's right here in New Jersey. So my message is, society and our community needs to wake up to the reality of this issue. I believe, and I've said it for years, and I'll continue to say it until the day I die. In my opinion, human trafficking is the world's largest human rights violation, and for the most part, the world seems to be pretty silent on it. And I say that because when I first mentioned the brothels in Southeast Asia, a lot of those brothels exist because the governments turn a blind eye, because it's American and European money that's coming into those countries solely for sex tourism. Right. So, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry in human trafficking worldwide. And what the United Nations has estimated is that human trafficking is the world's second largest crime, behind drug trafficking. And there will come a day where it will eclipse drug trafficking, as it has eclipsed weapons trafficking. You have to think to yourself, when organized crime, whatever that may be, a cartel, mafia, whoever that is, when they take a weapon, they sell it once the weapon's gone. When they sell a drug once, the drug is gone. What organized crime has found is that a human being can be sold repeatedly 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. I'll never forget when a member of a lieutenant from Homeland Security came and spoke to our students. He told our students of a raid that he was part of in Parsippany, New Jersey, right off Route 46 in Parsippany. There's a hotel, a Red Roof Inn, that he did surveillance on. The surveillance he did was for 1 week. He surveyed a room in this motel where a young Chinese girl was brought in. She did not leave for a week. However, throughout each day, there were multiple men, sometimes more than a dozen men, going in and out of that room every day. And she did not leave for 7 days. And that was a surveillance that he did, and that's what he mentioned to our students. Absolutely frightening, right? Like Parsippany, New Jersey, Red Roof Inn. Like, who would have ever suspected, right? Who would have ever thought that was happening? So, I applaud all of you for your interest in this topic. If you are interested in knowing more or getting involved with the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking, we are a coalition of over 200 organizations that are based here in New Jersey. You could get to know some of those organizations as well, if you'd like to volunteer and to do more regarding this issue. But it's definitely an issue that needs to be far more on the public's radar, and not just when someone like a Jeffrey Epstein is arrested. It needs to be on front page news on a daily basis, because as you could see through these very subtle tactics, it's very easy for predators and traffickers to prey upon our children and our young people. And the way the sexual exploitation of young people and children will end is when the public demands that it ends. There needs to be a unified voice to demand that the end of this heinous and awful crime. And here's just 3 more ways that you could keep children safe. And again, this is all on our website that you could take a look at. And it's just ways to. And I'll just end with this slide that the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking exists to abolish human trafficking in all forms.
Danny, one thing I want to bring up that you had talked about before, and obviously, folks, if you have questions, I'll stop yapping here in a second. But I mean, parents and I think we tend to pass judgment and fear if our kids are doing something that we're worried about, instead of maybe asking questions and listening. I remember you saying that before, that it's very important to get a sense of what it is that they're doing online, what it is they like about it, so that they feel that the communication is open, right? I mean, I think parents tend to, like you were saying, a lot of us don't want to think that this is happening because we can't tolerate the thought. It's so horrific. But I mean, isn't that a challenge for parents to really try to listen more?
Absolutely. And I think, and that's, relationships are so key, right? Having that open line of communication between a child and the parent is so incredibly important. But again, I'll go back to what I started out in the beginning, is that school is a safety net for kids who may not feel necessarily comfortable having those conversations with their parents, right? They may not feel comfortable having those conversations with their parents, but they feel comfortable talking to their counselor, or they feel comfortable talking to their coach, right? Or maybe they feel comfortable talking to one of their friends. And when school is taken away from them, like it has been for a very long period of time, right? I mean, we're talking well over a year now in many school districts, that that open line of communication may not exist. So yeah, from a parent's perspective, it's extremely important just to have casual conversations to find out what your child knows about, or what they're somewhat doing on social media, and so that they would feel comfortable if anyone ever said, hey, can you send me a picture of yourself? Or if they ever do make a mistake, look, we're humans, we're going to make mistakes, right? Maybe they're having a really rough time, and the way this person's pressuring them and having this conversation, maybe they do make a mistake, right? But if they do make the mistake, have that relationship and that communication that's there, that they can go to a parent and say, look, I sent this picture, I should never have done this, I don't know why I did it, this person got in my head, they made me feel a certain way and I ended up doing it. But you're right, the communication is so key. But it's also, yes, to have it, between parents and their child, but also, those healthy relationships that happen in a school building as well, for those to exist, that maybe that the child could have someone to talk to.
Someone's asking, yes, this recording, we'll share this recording. I have your permission to do that, right, Danny? We'll share this.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also I took a picture of a couple of your slides, but you said some of this information is available on your website as well.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Does anybody have any questions for Danny? I think you just have such a rich experience of not only educating your students, but going to action and understanding the need to corral more people to tackle something that is a very widespread. Like you said, that the reach of this is much larger than any of us know.
Yeah.
And we should know. I remember in your last presentation, you gave a statistic, and I think I see someone has their hand up, but didn't you say that this rivals the Super Bowl in revenue generated? There was some statistics that you had that was just really staggering to imagine.
Yeah. I think
And that's okay if you don't have it. And I'm sorry, I think it's S Glorioso. I don't know your first name, but please come pop off mute and share your question or your thought.
Okay, there we go.
Great.
I'm Sherry,
Hi.
and I am totally blown away by this. I mean, I know it exists. I didn't know it was like so close in my hometown, but it's very frightening. And my kids are at a place where they want to be online more, and I have 3 of them, and I can't keep track of them all the time.
Right.
I do my best to like, we'll all go in the living room and everybody gets, whatever time, and I'm like checking the screens, but I know that they could still sneak in and do stuff. Is there any kind of like software or prevention thing that we could use, or tracking thing? Because this is so real and it's so terrifying.
Yeah. That's a great question. I'm not really sure. I don't really have any one particular resource that I endorse in that sense, but I think it goes back to what Holly was saying about just having a relationship with your child that you can have those conversations with, and just to talk through some of this, right? Take this information and talk to them about it. And I think that some of this stuff will resonate with them, like, oh wow, yeah, I've had similar instances with this one. Every time I speak to young people, I always ask the same question: how many of you have ever had conversations with someone online that you didn't know who they were? And I ask them not to raise their hands, but eyes are never quiet, right? The eyes are the windows to the soul. And as I look into their eyes, they're all telling me that they have, right? So I think really it begins just having that conversation. All the reasons why, you shouldn't engage in a conversation with someone you really don't know, because they most likely are not who they say they are behind that profile or behind that picture. Yeah.
I have my one son is special needs, and he's like, he'll just go everywhere, all over. So I worry about that. And then like, I want to tell my kids the truth, but I don't want to like scare them, but I want them to be scared.
Right.
So do I let them be scared?
I honestly think that they may not be scared. I think some of this is just so reality, right? Like I don't think it's I just really think it's reality for them. I don't think it's something that's necessarily scary. But I think that they need to be aware, and I think that's really key. So here, what I'm doing is I'm putting in the chat the page on our website that has all of the online grooming information. And one thing on there, which I would highly recommend on that site, if you want to know more, is when you scroll down. Let me see where it is here. When you scroll down to the bottom, there's a link that says online safety resources, and it's called Trafficking and Exploitation via Apps and the Dark Web. Watch the video. There's a video there. That is a recording of Lieutenant John Pizarro's webinar that he did for us last spring, and there's a lot of information in there. I only skimmed the surface, so I highly recommend that video.
And Danny, I appreciate that. And I see, thank you, Sherry, for your question. Kim, I see that you have your hand raised, as well as Lisa, but just real quickly, I want to let the listeners on the call know,
we are in the process of seeking out a speaker on that very topic. Diane Varga, who I know is on the call, facilitates our mother's mom squad support group, because that's been a question that we've talked about a lot, because as Danny says, a lot of it is relational, but there are some safeguards that you can put in place, and we are currently seeking
Good.
a speaker to address that. So watch emails on that. If you're not on our list, make sure you send me your email and I will make sure you receive regular updates. But I'm going to go to Kim and then Lisa. Kim, did you have a question? Please pop off mute.
So I have a comment and a question. So my comment is, this is very, very real. My daughter is 12, getting ready to be 13. She has mild intellectual disability. So she has endured not having friends in school and of course wanting friends. And so I would encourage parents to know your child and also know their friends. Because under the guise of being on a Google Meet, right, during COVID and wanting to be with friends, my daughter was invited to join a Google Meet with her friends. And I thank God that I am a prayerful parent, because one night sitting in the living room, God said, look in that computer case, and her computer was not there. And I ran up the steps.
Uh-oh. Did Kim freeze?
She did. Oh,
Uh,
suspenseful.
Because she has mild intellectual disability, she didn't really know what was going on.
Yeah.
She had no clue, but I did. And of course I reached out to the school. I reached out to other parents. I acted quickly, and these are conversations that I had always had with her, but it's so fearful and so frightening. And in that moment I was crying because she had come so close to the very thing that I had talked to her about over and over and over again. But the desire to fit in and have friends and do what the friends are doing was stronger than, in that moment, it was like, well, later for what mom said,
Yeah.
My friends. And so I would encourage parents, know your kid and know who their friends are. And if your child suddenly becomes friends with someone who has never wanted to be friends with you.
Yeah, that's a great point.
yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Kim. And you keep freezing. I'm not sure if you had a question that you wanted to share. Maybe either turn off your camera or drop it in the chat. I heard the first part of what you're saying, but I think you're frozen right now, so we can still see your image. But in the meantime, Lisa, did you have something that you wanted to share or ask?
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for doing this. This is hugely helpful. I too, like the moms that were just speaking, I also have a child with special needs, and he also has a sister. I have two kids, and they too also, are popped from one thing to the other. And I try and be very careful of things, and I don't allow too many things, but I kind of had the same question in terms of a backup, so to speak. And one thing I've seen advertised, and I don't know enough about it except what they have there, is Bark, as BARK. I think it's supposed to be something that tracks everything and gives alerts all the time if anything even seems mildly suspicious, or someone, it came through. So I just want, because I think, like the other parents are saying, it's just,
Here's what I'll say to that. And the reason that I don't necessarily endorse any of these resources is because predators and traffickers are so savvy, they're going to find their ways around that. So for example, there's an app, it's a calculator app. And what the calculator app does is, it to you as the parent, it looks like a calculator, but what it essentially, the function of it is it hides apps, right? So like if you pick up your son or daughter's phone and you're looking through all the different apps, you're like, oh, I don't see Snapchat, I don't see that, I don't see Omegle, I don't see Kick, right? It could be hiding in an app, right? So there's ways around a lot of this, and
Right.
And that's why I was explaining that the dark web is so insidious, because it fosters conversation around, okay, how can we bypass Bark? How can we ensure that a parent's not getting an alert about the conversation we're having, right? So that's why it's really about relationships. But you, Lisa and Kim, you bring up a really interesting point. And so about a month or two ago, Covenant House, who's a partner of the coalition, Covenant House is a service provider here in the state of New Jersey, and they're doing a lot of work at this Robbinsville incident here. And anyway, so one of their presenters in one of our meetings talked about the linkage between victims of human trafficking and IEPs, that they saw a large, that what they've seen. And again, so I had a follow-up meeting with her because as an educator, I was so floored. Like, I'm like, that's the missing link. That's the like I've always been trying to find that where in education is the missing like link, or what are we not seeing? And when she said that, I fell off my couch. I'm like, this is unbelievable. This is like, this is like everything that I've been looking for is right here. And so we've had some conversations, and she talked to me about some of the research that they've done. But this is a topic that like we haven't even scratched the surface on researching or looking into. If it's something that, you know, for Kim and Lisa and anyone else on the call, if it's something that you're interested in, I personally, I am so swamped right now with so many different things. And this is something that I want to research more. But the way I left it with Covenant House was that we should put together a little bit of like a working group or a team to kind of talk through that, the connection between, you know, children with disabilities and IEPs and 504s and, you know, victims of trafficking. Because I think that in the very basic and preliminary research that they did, you know, they looked at, I forgot the exact percentage, but it was a pretty high percentage of the victims that they were working with of human trafficking when they were in school had an IEP or a 504. So it's definitely something that is I think no. Here's the thing. It's not terrifying because you know, right?
Yeah.
But but here's the thing. It's now that we know that, what can we do, right? Like,
Yeah.
as educators in the schools, what can we do while they're with us, to bring about awareness and have that social awareness, or that type of education that they'll need to then identify what we've talked about, right? And you know, it's an extremely heavy lift, because, you know, as you know, educators are so swamped and they're just looking to survive right now, COVID-19 and this pandemic, and just trying to figure out how to make learning meaningful in the midst of all of this. But hopefully we're returning to more normalcy, and when we do, you know, this can be really something I think we can make a lot of inroads in, and try to do a lot of research in. And, you know, that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is just looking at how to educate grades, you know, our elementary young people, about risk factors and warning signs, and how to really educate them on internet safety. So these are two huge things that I want to dive into, but I'm so, I'm so
you know,
swamped.
I tell you, I mean, my son has special needs, and my daughter is 1 year younger, but I feel like it impacts her so much too, because I could see, just even if it's not that he's getting attention for positive reasons, I see her own self-esteem taking a hit because he's getting attention, or because, you know, I feel like I'm listening to examples and I'm like, oh, she's, you know, both my kids, I'm like, oh, she's going to be the one that, you know, looks like she's having a rough day, and, you know, that kind of thing. So
Lisa, if I could ask
for that. Yeah.
Are you a part of our mom squad?
No, but I actually just for the first time saw that on the email.
You should be, and you should come tonight. 6:00 tonight, we're having a conversation about dynamics with siblings.
I saw that. Yeah, I just saw. I
so,
actually saw
and
that
even if you can't come tonight, we will record it. We will make it available. So please, I'm going to make sure that you and I connect on the mom squad. And I think, Kim, did you not get to ask your question? I think I might have gotten confused. Did you have a question? Danny, I'm sorry. Do you have a few minutes, or do you need to run?
I have a few minutes.
Okay.
No, I asked my question. I gotten cut off on the other computer, but my question was whether or not there were resources for.
Okay, I'm sorry. So maybe it was Sherry. Maybe I thought somebody tried to ask a question and got lost. Maybe I'm mistaken.
Yeah, so I would check out the link for resources, and Lisa, just one thing. You know, I don't know you at all, but I could tell that you care very deeply about your kids, and your kids know that as well. And that goes such a long way when we're talking about all of this. So
thank you.
Give yourself more credit, and
thank you.
You know, and as much as that's, challenging for your daughter, she knows that she has a mom that loves her and cares for her deeply. And that's, that's going to make all the difference.
Yeah, I hope so. We all do our best, right?
That's
Yeah.
right. But let me tell you, Danny Papa, you are such an optimistic speaker, an inspirational speaker on such a really challenging topic. And I'm going to reiterate, I loved your whole that education is not just awareness, that it's prevention. And I think as parents, I'll speak for myself, we often don't want to bring these things to the forefront to our children because we're fearful and we're also sad that we have to explain to them that these things exist.
Yeah.
But look at your story of what happened when you shared it with your students. And not
Yeah.
only did they understand, but they also said, let's work to fix this. Like, how can we, I think we have to have confidence in our children, regardless of their level of their level of ability, is that they understand that you are listening and you see them and you hear and you are understanding that we all make mistakes. So
Yeah.
I see. Thank you, Danny. I'm going to put in, I'll share your link, Danny. I'm also going to share the link. I'll go to your website and share that link directly to the video that you referenced on the resources.
Mhm.
And in the chat, I think Krista is going to drop the link to the survey. If you folks can take a minute just to complete the survey, which I will also email out with the recording, Danny, of this presentation, just to give feedback. And thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day, Danny, to I'll drop some important information, but also just some inspiration. Our children are smart cookies.
Absolutely. Oh, they absolutely are, without a doubt. In the link that I left for Project Stay Gold, check out the media section. Those are some of the videos that the students created.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. So we are at 1:05. Danny, thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
today. And everyone, thanks for
you
joining.
so much.
Thank you
if
so much.
You're welcome.
Nice
If
to
you
meet all
do
of
not-
you.
Yes. And if you do not already receive our emails, shoot me an email. Krista, can you put my email in the chat, and we'll make sure that you just get the updates on support groups that we offer. They're open to the public, and we're always happy to have you when you can join us. So everyone, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep talking to those kiddos, right?
Thank you.
And listening. Everybody take care, stay healthy.
Bye-bye.